Hey, this is Pete. Welcome to the show. In this episode, I sat down with my good friend and fellow graduate of the Living School, Mike Petrow. Mike is an expert in mythology, depth psychology, and religion. He holds a multitude of certifications and degrees, including a PhD in psychology, mythology, and religion from Pacifica Graduate Institute. Mike is the Director of Formation, Faculty Relations, and Theological Foundations with the Center for Action and Contemplation, a nonprofit founded by Franciscan friar and ecumenical teacher, Father Richard Rohr. In our conversation, Mike and I discuss our fractured selves, ancient wisdom for this modern age, ideas and concepts of Jungian psychology from the famous Swiss Psychoanalyst Carl Jung, and together we further explore healing the digital wound. We cover a lot of ground in this episode, so be sure to check out the show notes to learn more and for a list of helpful reference links. I hope you enjoy it. The technology has gotten out of hand. Can we agree with that? It's gotten crazy out there. And it sort of feels like nobody watched the Disney Channel original movie Smart House. Am I right? Nobody watched that. And it is a prophecy. One of the big things is, what would the wisdom figures from the past have said about what is currently happening with digitalization and this kind of move of everything into the virtual world? In your experience with Carl Jung, I think Jung, to me, he would have been all over this. He would have been able to break this down into symbol and, what it means on the mythological level, and even in what is it doing to our dreams and the way that we're kind of taking in the light of the conscious and how that's sort of being, changed, I guess, by this technology, which really is a modern phenomenon. Unless it, happened prior to, the known historical records
in the antediluvian world,
yeah. Right? Which is possible, I guess. But so yeah, that's one question I've had is like, what would these people have said about this? Because it sort of seems like, I think there are people talking about it, but I don't know that I've, I'll leave it there. I think,
God. Yeah. I mean, the question is like, how much time do you have? Here's the thing. How do I want to start? It's a great question. First of all, there was a Jungian influenced author named Robert Romanishyn who wrote a book called Technology as Symptom and Dream. Fascinating premise. And it's a couple of years old now. So the technology in question would be a little outdated, but this idea that the technology is a symptom and dream of collective humanity, I think is really, really, first of all, very, very valuable as a guiding principle. We, as humans, invented this technology, and we did it with conscious and unconscious motivations. There is an idea in Jungian psychology, it's maybe my favorite idea. It's not a super popular one, but Jung talked about this idea of the enantiodromia. And that word translated from, I think, Latin, forgive me for not remembering if it's Latin or Greek. Enantiodromia is running towards the opposite, is the literal translation. It's the idea of when you do something with a conscious intention, but it brings about the exact opposite result of what you intended. Have you ever made a really good choice? You had really, really good intentions, and the impact was completely different than what you expected. Maybe even the opposite. You do something to try to bring someone closer and you end up pushing them further away. You make what you think is going to be a really good investment and you lose money on it. There's 1,000 examples. Jung's whole notion was that we do something with a conscious intent, but there's an unconscious motivation that shapes the result more than we think it will. I would say that the technological moment that we're living in is a giant special enantiodromia, where we have invented technology after technology after technology with the intention of making our lives better and improving the human condition, and with the result of making things worse. And that is because we are flawed, imperfect, and sometimes neurotic human beings. And that neurosis comes out in our art and in our creativity and in our making. There's a great book called, it's a little dry, but it's really good, called Super Bloom, which came out a couple months ago.
Yeah, I've got it.
Oh, it's great, right? It's great.
Did you read it then? Or?
I'm about a third into it.
Yeah, same for me. Yeah.
Right. The premise is great. Every advance in human technology and every advance in human communication has simultaneously brought us closer and also alienated us from each other. Mm-hmm. Whether it was reading, which gives us all different ideas, but also is something we do alone. I was fascinated by how he talked about people thinking the telegraph would end war because we're connecting the world. Right. And the telegraph probably caused World War I because so many things happened so fast and there was so much reactivity. Anyway, I could go on and on and on, but the moral of the story is, one, there's an enantiodromia here where social media, communication, and surveillance technologies have torn us apart in a lot of ways. I don't remember the author who wrote 10 Reasons for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts right now, but he really explores a lot of the dynamics of why people with really good intentions created things like Facebook, which was supposed to be a place for friends, which ended up instead like creating algorithms that push people further and further away. Anyway, I said all that to say this. If our technology is just a gigantic expression of our unconscious motivations and our collective neurosis, then I think even though this technology is new, we can turn around and look at the wealth of the world's wisdom teachers and mythologies as far back as we go as a species, and we still can find wisdom for the moment that we're in, and things that maybe predicted this a little bit. And I will say this and shut up. But even if you think about the idea of like Maya, right? This East Asian philosophical idea that we are living in a world of illusion, or the Russian Orthodox talk about pre-list, which is also like the illusion of sin. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, my friend, but I feel like we are living in an illusion right now, and we're making it worse every moment of every day and compounding the layers one on top of the other on top of the other. Yeah. So I would start there. And then I would say that Jung in specific has a psychology that is very uniquely suited to respond to this particular moment. But let me pause and say, does any of that land for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, some of the things that jump out is obviously the illusion. Mm-hmm. And that the illusion really is, you know, it's not a stretch at all to say that, you know, there's these almost these like discrepancies that are happening in real time in our world, where you see basically the meeting of these two worlds, and it's incredibly clunky, right?
Oh, it's like, so clunky.
You know, I mean, a great example of it is just that, you know, you've got people driving cars, right? And so you're in the car, and this is kind of an extreme example because it's incredibly dangerous. You know, just you get into a car and it's immediately dangerous, right? To be driving around. Yeah. And yet we've got this, you know, this device in our hands that, you know, is providing us our navigation, you know, for the real world, but then is through the virtual world, we get the map. Yeah. And if those don't match up, you hear these stories of people just like driving into a building or into because the map says there's a road there, but it hasn't been updated. So it's like you get these really strange sort of situations. Another one was like, this was actually when I was in New Mexico. There was a car that had parked just outside the house we were living in, and I was always kind of like on alert, making sure like, there wasn't anything going on. Right. So I went over and just like knocked on the window and asked the person like, what are you doing? And I'd seen this same car just like several times, and it was just very like sort of suspicious behavior. And I knocked on the window and they rolled down the window and I said, hey, what are you doing? I've seen you here a couple times. And they said, well, I'm playing Pokemon Go. And, this house has like one of the gyms near it. And, and there's also like a rare Pokemon over here. So like, I got to hang out here to catch it and be at the gym. And it's just like, I think with Pokemon Go specifically, it was just this strange overlapping of worlds. And it's been clunky, and in some ways I'm surprised it hasn't been worse, honestly.
Give it time.
Yeah. And here's like one more example, which I feel like is, some of those examples are sort of, we've heard those before, but one thing I've noticed recently, so I was at the park with the kids, right? And we're on the swings and doing the thing, and we've got to use the bathroom, right? And so we go into this. Well, before that, we're at the park. I see this guy like walk in to the bathroom, and we, James has to use the bathroom as well, right? And so we walk in, and like I see the guy walk in, phone is up to his face like this, right? Just walking in, just looking at his phone, right? Walks in, goes straight to the urinal, right?
Yeah.
And I walk in, and I've got two kids. I'm thinking about germs and kind of like, is this an appropriate place to have my kids, to like, and I go in and the place is just, it's a public park, right?
Yeah.
And it just looks awful.
It's a disaster.
Smells awful, right?
Yeah.
Just like everything you can imagine. I won't get into it. And the guy though that I'm, had been on his phone, up at the urinal, phone up to his face, doesn't look at all at what, I mean, it's basically like there's stuff on the walls and like, and I basically just say like, we're not doing this. We're not going to use this facility here. But the guy, like goes like this, turns around, and then walks out, just phone up to his face. I don't think he saw any of what was going on in that bathroom because I don't know that he would have used it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you should mention that because I've recently been saying that my greatest pet peeve in the world, I don't know if this is a swearing podcast, so I'm editing language, but I have real strong feelings about this, is men having very loud conversations in a restroom while they're using the bathroom, whether they're sitting in a stall or standing in a urinal. And I'm like, get off your phone. Like, you're sitting here taking a crap, like button up the conversation, dude. But the ever presence of phone technology is insane to me. The idea that we're no longer looking at the world. I'm going to back it up and say something else in a minute. But like one of my other sort of I have a second pet peeve. I'm a single man. I've had a couple pretty good relationships in my life, but I live alone with a cat. And I'm not celibate, so I'm not taking a vow of singleness. So sometimes I'm partnered and sometimes I'm not. But, when you're single, one of the things that you appreciate is your time alone, but you also see what a gift it is for people to find a partner and get to share their life with someone.
Yeah.
And I am a bit of a romantic, so I have that much more of appreciation for it. And my greatest pet peeve in the world, after men talking loudly in public restrooms, is watching a couple in public who go out to have dinner or have a drink and then are both on their phones at the same time, not talking to each other. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You've chosen to share your life or your evening with another person. And I literally, and I'm not bold enough that I've ever walked up to someone and said this, but I've wanted to be like, you're sitting, look at you, you're both beautiful. Why are you on your phones? Enjoy each other's company. I remember sitting at the press club here in Albuquerque, one of my favorite places. It's super weird. And I was sitting out on the porch outside, probably drinking an old fashioned, watching the sunset over the city, and a couple sat near me and they stared at their phones the entire time and sipped their drinks and stared at their phones. And I'm like, you're not looking at this beautiful sunset. You're not looking, and they're beautiful people. I was like, you're not looking at each other. What the hell are you doing with your lives?
Yeah. What is so interesting?
Seriously.
It just, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe that's what they wanted. I don't know. But let me say this too. It's an interesting thing about how technology imitates human experience and vis-a-vis. So our shared teacher, Richard Rohr, loves to talk about the what he calls the wisdom pattern, the developmental pattern of order, disorder, and reorder. Mm-hmm. And the idea is we create a sense of order for how things should be in our lives. I always say it's a GPS. It's our ideas about God, it's our ideas about people, and it's our ideas about self. That's the GPS that we create. And that helps us navigate. Every one of us does that psychologically. And then at a certain point, that GPS fails us, just like you're talking about. I remember experiencing this when I lived in New York City, where things change so frequently. The GPS would throw me the wrong way down a one-way street.
Yeah.
Or crazy shit would happen. You know this. You live in this city too. It was not safe.
Yeah.
And so the GPS fails you. The order fails you. And then you go into what Richard says is disorder. And the disorder is when you interrogate your GPS, your sense of how things should be with lived experience, and you find out that it's different. It's led you in the wrong direction. And then suddenly you don't have a sense of order and you don't have a faithful GPS and you're off the map a little bit. And then he says, eventually you find reorder and you figure it out. You learn to live in the ambiguity. You shift from how things should be to how things are. And then eventually, God willing, you get to how things could be. Not only does this mirror information technology, but I think it's where we are in the human race in our relationship with this technology. We started in order. Oh my God, look, we have communication technologies. They're gonna help us talk to each other. They're going to bring humanity closer together. They're going to make relationships better.
Wars and
wars. They're going to give us time-saving devices. They're going to give us back time.
Yeah.
They're going to help us organize our lives, right? And now we're at a point where time-saving devices have somehow made us more busy than we've ever been. Mm-hmm. Communication technologies have broken humanity down. The algorithms, have put fascists in office, have made us hate our friends and neighbors because of things they post on social media. And we can get into this if you want. Social media, I think, is fracturing our psyches because it puts us on a display. The opportunity to share ourselves is actually making us less authentic somehow. So I think we're in a collective moment of disorder with technology, where we're realizing or some folks like yourself especially are just beginning to realize, oh, this doesn't do what it's supposed to do. This is failing me completely. And actually I need to pause you for 1 sec because I just realized my cat pushed the door open and my air conditioning's on. So hold on 1 second.
No problem.
Speaking of technology, I'm like, why is that fan blowing so loud? Okay. Yeah. Does any of that resonate at all?
Yeah, totally. There's a lot I could say about about that. But one of the aspects that I wanted to get into with you was specifically based on, what is the fractured self
Oh
in,
yeah.
how are we fracturing ourselves with all of these different, I guess, points of access to
Yeah.
ourselves, but really, I guess how it relates uh, to Jung's idea or concept of individuation.
Yeah.
This idea of the integrated self is sort of
Yeah.
the path for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And if we're creating all these different profiles and sort of false,
Yeah.
shadow type um, parts of ourselves that in some ways have gone off the rails and are kind of out of control in terms, like, I have a list of all the different logins and passwords for all the different profiles and social media accounts, but really, like, every app asks you to create a profile, right? And
Yeah.
if you break, I find that if you start to break down some of the language that's being used, it's pretty obvious what's happening. But a lot of times it's just become so um like ubiquitous with how we're using it, and it's like, oh yeah, of course they want me to make a profile of myself, right? But
Yeah.
I feel like every time you do that, you're kind of adding to this fracturing. And I think it's of varying degrees. I think, if I just need to make a profile for something and I don't upload a photo and it's kind of just like it's just the basic information, maybe it's harmless. But if you get into these platforms where they're literally trying to monopolize your attention, they're
Yeah.
built to attract you more to their technology and their platform, that it starts to be, there's these research done where it's like, I think it's like it's got to be more than that, but like 9 hours a day, Gen Z is spending in these platforms, like on top of school and sleeping. And it's
Yeah.
like the trade-offs for these things are insane, right? To the point where you're spending more time in the virtual world than in the real world.
Yeah.
And more is being asked of you. And I think that's part of it, is just that, there's these algorithms that are at work that are based on uh I guess, like, the feeding of the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, my point is that I really feel like Jung's concept of individuation and this path to wholeness really is really sort of topical, I think, in
Yeah.
this time, right?
Yeah. Let me wind my way into this because it's interesting. We have Well, so first of all, living in the virtual world is something else. Let's pin this to come back to it, right?
Okay.
So we have a lot of contemporary myths that talk to us about living in the virtual world. You have the Matrix, you have Avatar in its own way, you have some really, really good books like Snow Crash and Ready Player One, and the this idea of what it means to live in a world that's outside of this world, I think is really important. So let's come back to mythology at the
Yeah.
bottom of the
Okay.
conversation, and let's not lose that thread. Then I know that's something you and I are going to talk about. The I so you asked a big question, and so I'm just going to tease it out for a second, and then we'll unpack it. One, you mentioned the integrated self, and I think that's really, really important, Peter. I think you're really onto something here because the moral of the story is the Jungian ideal of wholeness is the integrated self. It's putting all the pieces back together. Jung talks about, he gets this idea from the apokatastasis, which is an idea from Greek philosophy and actually from early Christianity. It's the early Christian idea of universal salvation, that the entire universe is moving, it was fractured, but is moving towards this place of reharmonizing everything, where everything is still individual, but also in harmony. And we could talk about that another time. That's a big, big and important idea, both in understanding Christianity and, as Jung realized, in understanding the psyche. But here's my point. We need to be reintegrated because we have been disintegrated. The psyche has been fractured by the experience of living in this world and in a culture that makes many, many, many demands on us and pulls us in many, many different directions. And then we ourselves, and another day we could talk about Harry Potter and the Horcrux myth, and how Voldemort's breaking his soul into many, many pieces in an attempt to be immortal is in some ways a lot like all of us putting our soul permanently in this profile and that profile and that profile and that profile in a way that is we're not going to get this deep, an attempt to sort of immortalize ourselves. Because these profiles do actually outlive us, right? I have many friends who've passed away and there's still social media profiles of them out there. But the most important part, where we start, is that the psyche is fractured by the many demands placed on us by the culture and the people around us. We come into this world, we're relatively whole but relatively unconscious, and our parents want us to be a certain way, and our teachers want us to be a certain way, and our friends want us to be a certain way. And we learn in living into that approval, which is not just approval for the sake of vanity. When we're young, it's a survival issue, right? We want our parents to love us. And even the best parents don't pick up on the unconscious signals they send us and the very overt ones about how we should be. So in order to live into what gets us rewarded, we hide some parts of our personality and we exaggerate other parts of our personality. And if you exaggerate parts of your personality enough and you hide parts of your personality long enough, what happens is those hidden parts get so hidden that we forget about them. And they drop into what Jung calls the shadow or the unconscious, right? And not everything in the unconscious is repressed. There's a lot that just is generally unconscious. In the same way that you're not thinking about breathing right now. There's things that just happen. But we hide some things on purpose, and then we fracture our psyche and we lose touch with those things that are authentic parts of who we are. And then the other thing is we exaggerate certain things for the sake of getting rewarded, to the point that we exaggerate them beyond authenticity. So we live into parts of ourselves that we almost start to fake it. This is we start acting a little bit. This is where the word hypocrite comes from. Hypocrite means actor. We become hypocrites because we're pretending to be something we're not. Another word is the word persona, which is a word for the masks that actors would wear. And Jung used that to say that in our psyche, we have a shadow, which is where we lose the parts of ourself that we hide. And then we have the persona, which is the acting parts of us, which is the parts of us that we play into for protection or reward, to the point of exaggerated inauthenticity. And then in between those is the ego, which is the part of us that's sort of alert and trying to be in charge. And behind all that is the self with a capital S, which is the actual objective totality of who we are. Which, so sorry, that's a lot of words. But what I want to say is that the demands put on us for approval in so many different arenas of social media, I think, further encourage the fracturing of the psyche. Because like you just said, you have 10 different profiles. That's 10 different personas. That's 10 different fabricated, cultivated personalities for the approval of others. And again, you might, as authentic as you want to be, like the me that I am on Instagram, which is, I'll stand behind everything I've ever posted on Instagram, but that's not the totality of who I am, right? And we've literally, for fuck's sake, like, pardon my language, we've literally created a technology that so objectively quantifies how persona and shadow work. What happens? What is the reward when I put something for you to view on Instagram? What is the reward system?
Well, it's the love buttons, right?
That's it. That's it. The
Right.
more likes I get, the higher up it goes in the news feed, which causes it to get even more likes. And so what happens is, I have had so many friends who've gotten off Instagram because they're like, I realized without realizing it that what I was doing is paying attention to the posts that got the most likes and then trying to build more posts like those to get more likes.
Yep.
This is technology. And here's the thing, Peter, it's making us neurotic, but it's also giving us a gift because it is showing us objectively how this works. Mm-hmm. You do the same thing. Like if you wear a shirt to work and 3 of your coworkers are like, that's a dope shirt, that looks great on you, you're probably going to wear it a little bit more often, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to be like,
totally.
I should dress like this more often because it gets more rewards. And so the technology is, of course, we invented the technology. Like we like to be liked, so we invented a technology that people are going to like, and the technology that people like is a technology that shows them when they're being liked. What a shocker. But what it also does is, pick any Instagram influencer, it's not hard to see. It does feel a little fake because you realize we can always tell when someone's leaning into approval. And when we do that, we start to lose parts of ourselves. So then we counterbalance it, and people are like, here's a picture of me without makeup, so you see the real me. I'm a man, I don't wear makeup, so I want to be careful that I'm not accidentally being sexist in how I say that. But I'm quoting women friends of mine who are like, well, that's great. Look at me. I'm defying odds and expectations. But then what happens when you post a picture of yourself without makeup? You get a lot of likes. So then you're going to post more pictures of yourself. Like, look at me not caring about standards of beauty. Don't you like me for it? It's such a weird trap. Yeah. And again, I have so many friends who are like, I had to get off Instagram because I wasn't living my life. All I was thinking about was what pictures I could take of it that would get likes, and like what stories I could post. And like before I eat my meal, I take a picture of it. So that's a lot of words. I'm going to stop, but I'm not going to stop without saying what the technology is showing us is what we also do all the time, devoid of the technology. And I think the reason so many people have realized they need to get off the apps or need to change their relation to it is they feel the stress of the fracture of their psyche. They feel that their persona is getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And it's like you're a little kid living for the approval of your parents, but your parents are now the tyranny of the entire public world coming to you through social media. And you are losing crucial components of who you are in your shadow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about it.
Sorry, my cat.
It's all good.
Just completely tangled himself up in my headphone wear. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
I'll let you get that sorted.
Oh my God, buddy. All right, there we go.
Well, that's why they're doing the AirPods now. I feel like I'm living in the past with my big cords here. It's just like dangling. If you want to, if you want to,
go ahead. Oh my God! Oh no! After you.
Yeah, no, if you want to let people know you're out of touch, you wander around with a big cord, all the cords hanging out.
Seriously. I feel so retro and cool with a cord until my cat just nearly strangled himself because he was trying to snuggle on my lap.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's another thing too, is like, what's all the kind of Bluetooth, like, there's no cord, but there's still a signal being sent.
100%.
So it's like, what's all that doing?
Yeah.
I think for us, it's almost like as human beings, it's like very hard to quantify the unseen, right?
Dude.
And so it's like we're constantly receiving and sending these signals. And Nicholas Carr says that in Super Bloom.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is that doing? Not just that it's all of us are constantly accessible, but it's just like, what is that doing to our bodies? Because we know that sound waves exist, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a real thing. We can't see them, but they're there, right? Like, we can all agree that sound waves exist. Something unseen is having an effect on the physical world. It's like, to me, it's all having an effect. It's just we haven't done it's like it hasn't been out long enough for the research to come out to say this is what it did to us.
Yeah.
It's like, but all of it is, it's doing something to us.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, 100%. So 2 things on that. One, I hope to God we get there. I feel like 20 years from now, like, people say things like this. I feel like our kids are going to look back and they're going to see photos and videos of people with phones in their hands, the way that we look at a doctor smoking a cigarette while he's talking to a pregnant woman in his office. And you're like, are you shitting me? The cigarette smoking was that prevalent? It's so bad for you. And I think it's a no-brainer that we're like this. But here's the thing. This is where it plays in. This is where technology is an expression of the human psyche. We are always sending and receiving signals. We are always sending unconscious communication and receiving it. And a lot of it is like what gets us rewarded and what gets us neglected or punished. And that's why we're always losing more and more parts of ourselves into the shadow. And we're creating heavier and heavier personas. And so Jung's idea is that the goal to health is to get back in touch with your shadow. But you asked me about individuation. Individuation is not narcissism. It's not living for yourself as an individual. It is unplugging from all those other reward systems, reward punishment systems, so we can get back in touch with who we really are. And sometimes that means unplugging from the scripts that your parents gave you, and unplugging from the scripts that society and culture is giving you, and unplugging from the scripts that that your friend circle and church and community are giving you, to get back in touch with the authenticity of who you are. And it may now also mean unplugging from the literal technology that is making those scripts even more loud. Mm-hmm. And I want to say something about being seen before we run out of time, but can I share something crazy with you?
Yeah, of course. This is the place to do it.
This is crazy.
Publicly. Yeah.
So I don't know if this will get through the editors to see the light of day, but last week I took Richard Rohr to California to be a guest on Oprah Winfrey's podcast. And they were kind enough to let me sit in on the studio when they recorded. And I don't know if her editors will let this out into the light of day. And I think you and I are both small enough that like no one's going to find us and sue us. But one of the things Oprah said in that podcast was, she was talking about the pressures of like trying to be a change maker in the world. And she said, you know what? Dr. Martin Luther King had to deal with bomb threats, assassination attempts, dogs, and police, but he never had to deal with social media. She said even Dr. King didn't have to deal with the 24/7 onslaught of people chipping away at you, attacking you, telling you who and how to be, or the 24-hour news cycle. And holy shit, what a statement. I don't think Like I that gave me pause. Because I think even those of us who are trying to live our lives to make a difference and to make the world a better place don't realize how much that 24/7 nonstop cutting away of the reward and punishment system of public approval chips away at us. And I'll say that and say this before we sort of maybe move on to the next question or unpack some myths and symbols. The great tragedy of it is that I think at the end of the day, we really do want to be seen and known in our authentic selves. You and I have talked about this before. There was a third generation psychoanalyst analyst named Masad Khan, who's a very, very controversial figure. And if I was to look at him through a Jungian lens as opposed to a Freudian lens, I would say he had a massive persona and a massive shadow. He was very controversial. He was an analyst who slept with a lot of his patients. He created a persona that wasn't real. He claimed to be a prince and he wasn't, and told a lot of lies about himself. But that sort of makes him the ideal candidate to share this very profound insight. He wrote about the secret private self. And he said that what we want more than anything in the world is to be known in our most private self. And so his theory was that for the majority of the human race's existence, we have felt like God or the gods are watching us. And so we have felt known in the depth of our being. And even though he said for the majority of the human race's existence, life was harder, disease was more rampant, lifespans were shorter, there was harder things to deal with in the day-to-day. He felt like humanity's existential suffering was harder now, even though we had more cushier lives and better technology and better medicine, because we no longer felt witnessed and known by God or the gods. And so his theory was that psychoanalysis had evolved as a way for people to feel seen and known in the depth of who they are. And I would build on that and say, I think we developed social media as a way to put ourselves out there and feel witnessed by others. The paradox being, I think social media feeds on the persona and it drives the shadow even deeper. And I think in our effort to be seen and known, many of us feel even more alienated and lonely in the depth of our being, because you cannot be seen and known through a carefully crafted persona that's based on the amount of likes that you get.
Yeah, that's exactly what my question was going to be is, it's like, what are these platforms drawing out more so if it's not the shadow? Because the shadow, my understanding, is the aspects of yourself that you have hidden or sort of weren't acceptable by the society or your parents or whoever's kind of setting that standard.
Yeah.
And so if the personas are the things that are being built up and the shadow is being driven down, and the idea is that you'd want to integrate, right? And regardless of what people think about those aspects of yourself, it would be good to live into those, right?
Yeah.
And so what is it, I mean, what do you feel like is the, if any, what is the step to take in order to like slow down that process of, I guess, like personas just being, kind of out of control, right? And you actually get a lot. I was reading The Anxious Generation, right, by Jonathan Haidt, and he talks about the rise of influencers who are claiming like dissociative identity disorder, right? And to me, that's not to get into that territory too much, but to say like that seems like it makes sense based on what you're saying, of building up these different personas, it's almost like the logical conclusion that you would be split into different
Yeah.
identities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a sort of a, and let's be clear, like we all go through life, um, being different people as we have to be. Like Jung was very clear about this. He's like, you need a persona. He's like, you got to wear the uniform when you show up to a place where the uniform is required, right? You don't dress the way you do sitting on your couch at 11 p.m. As blah, 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 what am I trying to say? You don't go to work dressed the same way that you are when you're sitting on your couch at 11 p.m. He said that's not authenticity. That's
Right.
being a human with responsibilities. And that's also having a certain degree of social acumen. The problem is when we lose it, and it starts running our lives instead of the other way around, and we forget who we actually are in the midst of it. So while I show up one way with one person and another way with another person, both of those things are authentic, knowing authentic expressions of the totality of who I am as a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it skillfully, or I am unconsciously being drawn into different directions. And then I am literally drawn and quartered in the sense of the ancient torture, where I am torn apart and I am a fractured person. And yes, DID, dissociative identity disorder, is 100% the result. Especially, oh my God, so many influencers are so young, they don't even know who they are yet. They haven't fully, I don't want to say they haven't fully formed their frontal lobe. That's disrespectful. But like we're always developing and in a process of self-discovery.
Yeah.
But I think that these things are fracturing us. I think they're also creating a scenario where we're cultivating a persona, but the shadow is my God, social media, the shadow is let loose at terrifying gargantuan proportions. Like let's not even talk about how this has driven current politics and the way people argue about politics online. Because, I say this, road rage and social media rage are the same. Whenever you put a screen and a machine between people, we dehumanize each other.
Yeah.
I know we have to transition to part 2 of our conversation. This is good because I want to take a break to think about some of this more deeply. But the point is, you are asking the right question because you're feeling the right thing. This is fracturing our psyches more deeply. It is literally breaking us as people. And it is not a tool for self-discovery. And it is not a tool for individuation for many folks. It is the tyranny of reward and punishment, it is taking us apart. And so, your passion is healing the digital wound, which is a beautiful phrase, and I can't say enough good things about it. My passion is being true selves in a virtual world. And I think we're getting at the same thing. I don't think social media is going to go away. I don't think communication technology is going to go away. I think we can change the way we relate to it. I think there's a lot of wisdom in the world's wisdom traditions, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in fairy tales and myths, recent and ancient, to help us think through how to do it differently. And I do think that if technology is symptom and dream, every symptom and dream can lead us to an understanding of ourselves and help us be more healthy. So I think in the next part of our conversation, what I'd love to chat about with you is how can recognizing all of this help us, one, start doing these things on purpose instead of by accident, and then 2, think about how to be more healthy. And I think let's I think where I'd love to take up with this is for me to ask you, what myths and fairy tales do you think have been helpful in helping you think more deeply about this?
Yeah, great. So we'll pick up with part 2, and thanks, Mike, for all your wisdom and helping us unpack this. It's a big one. I feel like we've been on for 45 minutes or so, and I don't think we've scratched the surface. And
Not at
that's,
all.
it's in a lot of ways great because it's a lot of material to get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to have you on, 10 more times
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Well,
sort of, because again, it's like I asked two questions, maybe, and
yeah.
maybe one half a
Yeah.
question. And
And this was me being brief in my thoughts about it. Cause like you, I think about this all the time.
yeah, and it's great to hear you reading Super Bloom as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like we're both a third of the way in, and
Yeah.
yeah, and Nicholas Carr wrote The Shallows as well, which is the one I had
Yeah.
read previously,
Yeah.
that I had been talking about. But he wrote it maybe, I don't know, many years, like 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So Super Bloom's the new iteration.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think ultimately for me, it's great to talk about all the examples of people running into walls, because they're looking at their phones or whatever. And it's not to poke fun at anybody because
No.
we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Even
Yes.
if you've decided, like for myself, I've decided to take pretty major steps to kind
Yeah.
of delete accounts or mitigate, my smartphone use and but for me it's like we're all moving in this we don't know where yet
Yeah.
in this direction.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to know though that like we still have the in-person connection that you can always kind of bank on.
Yeah.
and you can always, as awkward as it is, you can always go there. And
Yeah.
so for me, I'm ultimately interested in, like I said, it's like we can talk about the problem all day,
Yeah.
but I'd like to get into in our next session, just, what are some of the things we can be doing to, address this? Because a lot of it's, becoming aware of it, which,
Yep.
is a major step.
Yeah.
And then once you're aware of it, what do you do? Because I think it's one of those things where like I'm extremely aware of it now, but I don't know what the exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some ideas and some strategies and things, but to me, it's so dependent on, it's like if everyone else is playing a different game than you, then what do you do if you're kind of in that like sort of strange between space where you're aware of it, but you don't know who else is aware of it and who the community is, to kind of tap into. Anyway, it's a big question. And part of doing this podcast, one of the major things is I'm trying to educate myself.
There you go.
By talking to you and, learning from what it is, the experiences you have as an expert in a lot of these different areas. And then, hopefully talking to a lot more folks as well.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and then I gotta escape. But we'll take up for the second half of this conversation. As much as the here's the paradox of Jungian psychology, right? Nothing's dogmatic and clear. As much as the social media it's what it's doing is pulling us deeper into persona, and it's hiding things more deeply in shadow. But Jung says, the shadow acts up, or it possesses us, and then we know it's there. And I think what's happening is social media has become a collective expression of the human shadow right now. And I think some of us are noticing. And so, the steps of shadow work are first, encounter, notice, then educate. And that's mutual. Like you educate yourself about what's going on and you listen deeply. You let yourself be educated by what's being expressed in the shadow, even if it's hateful and vile. You listen, and then you integrate, and then you evolve and you change. And so I think you and I right now are probably in the encounter and education phase of that, where we're trying to understand and listen, and that's hard for me because a lot of times what you have to listen to is very immature and very unpleasant. But yeah, let's get into that, because I think that's the question, is like, how do we integrate this? How do we evolve? Because some of you are going to use dumb phones and delete your social media accounts. It's still going to be the water you swim in. It's still going to shape the culture. But we need people holding that post, and then some of us are going to try to change how we use our phones, or like try to use these things consciously. But this is the point. Whatever we do, we want to do it on purpose and not by accident, right? Do it on purpose and not by accident. That's being conscious. That's being contemplative. That's being mindful. Pick the language you want, but let's do it on purpose and not by accident. And let's get back to being purposefully present to our lives. So we're living them, and they're not living us, and we're not being lived by other forces, conscious, unconscious, and unfortunately sometimes very intentionally manipulating us. So yeah, looking forward to it, my friend.
Hey, it's Pete here. If you're considering joining the Dumb Phone Club with me, consider the Wise Phone 2 from Techless and enjoy $25 off with code DumbPhonePete at checkout. Broadcasting from the hill country of Austin, Texas, the Dumb Phone Pete podcast is a production of Symbol and Story and is available to stream on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to check out our website, dumbphonepete.com, for new episodes, upcoming live shows, speaking events, personal and group coaching packages, and our helpful resources page. If you're able to support us with your dollars, visit our Give page to make a secure donation to the project. We sincerely appreciate all your support. And as always, don't be stupid. Stay dumb, people.